Today's hearing, we're going to examine the consultation process that takes place pursuant to Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, or NHPA. Congress enacted the statute in 1966 to ensure that the federal government would give due consideration to preserving America's historical artifacts with appropriate stakeholders. This section of NHPA is itself purely procedural, and as such, it requires government officials to undertake a specific process but doesn't mandate any specified outcome. In that regard, it's similar to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NHPA, which directs a process, not a result, and which the Supreme Court recently, in its 7-county decision, returned to a right-sized role in federal policymaking. Today, we'll consider the scope of Section 106 of NHPA to ensure that it plays the role that Congress intended when NHPA was enacted. We'll be hearing from 3 witnesses today to better understand these issues. They are, first, Dr. Chris Merritt, the State Historic Preservation Officer for the state of Utah. Second, Mr. Andy McDonald, the Environmental Compliance Manager for Montana Dakota Utilities Company. And finally, from Mr. Stephen Concho, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for Pueblo of Acoma. Welcome to each of you. When a law written to protect our past starts to block our future, it can be worth examining where we are and how we got here and how we might find a better balance and a better way forward. The National Historic Preservation Act was written in 1966 to prevent places of genuine historical value from being wiped out before anyone even had the chance to speak up or to identify a relevant consideration. Few, if any, would dispute that purpose. We ought to protect the places that show where we came from and who we are. But over the years, a narrow procedural safeguard has evolved into a sprawling, unpredictable process that now delays some of the very projects our country needs to build and maintain that story. Section 106 has within it a consultation process that has become more like a maze without a map. Agencies, developers, and even preservation officers often don't know where the boundaries lie or how long the path will be. That confusion is showing up all over the country, and the uncertainty it sows has consequences for everyone. The Royal Slope Solar Project in Washington is now 3 years behind schedule. The Bonanza Solar Project in Nevada has been under construction for nearly 3 years. The Cape Wind and Vineyard Wind projects in Massachusetts each faced long delays before they could move forward. The Great Lakes Tunnel Project in Michigan, which would improve an important energy link across the upper Midwest, has spent years caught in back-and-forth reviews. Ironically, this project began because the state insisted the existing pipeline was unsafe and that it needed to be buried for protection. But once the tunnel was proposed, the area of potential effects, as the statutory language directs us to inquire into, it became so broad that every step triggered a new consultation. That in turn broadened the scope, and the broadened scope has added roughly 4 years to the schedule of the project. In Oregon, the Department of Forestry used most of its planning funds on heritage surveys required under Section 106. Instead of the wildfire work, those dollars were meant to support. These are not just the priorities of one particular political party or another that we're talking about. This affects projects all over the country, supported by people of many, many different backgrounds. They include solar and wind projects that my friends on the other side of the aisle would very much like to move forward, and yet they all run into the same consultation process that has grown so broad and at times inconsistent that it hinders and in some cases outright blocks projects, even though they may enjoy support from both political parties and from people at every point along the ideological continuum. My home state of Utah has shown how we can recalibrate and achieve a balance acceptable to everyone. Our state Historic Preservation Office has digitized records, created clear expectations, and kept consultation moving efficiently. Utah protects what is genuinely historic while allowing much-needed projects that will benefit its citizens to move forward in a timely manner. A law meant to safeguard our shared national heritage should not become an instrument of paralysis. Congress can preserve what's worth remembering without turning every permit into an archaeological expedition. The purpose of this law is and was always to protect what matters, not to make action impossible. Preserving our heritage should help us build wisely, but it should not and must not keep us from building at all. That is the balance this hearing is about. That's the type of balance we're hoping to be able to find, exploring ways to protect the story of where we've been without making it impossible to build what comes next.